Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, it's Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. We come to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening, 6:30 Central Time. Gruesome twosome tonight. Joe, a late scratch tonight. So just Dom and I. What's funny is he recommended this movie, American Graffiti, provided the movie on Vudu.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately had to miss the show last minute. We wish Giuseppe well, but we will hold down the fort and talk about this movie that he wanted us to talk about. American Graffiti. We're doing a retro review. I can't remember the last time we did a retro review. It might have honestly been Strange Days. Might have been that long ago. We haven't done one yet.
And Strange Days, I think I put 4 stars. I love that movie.
I know you did. I know you did. American Graffiti, though, this one, George Lucas directed, 1973. Kind of one of the, I think it's accurate to call this one of the founding fathers of the coming-of-age genre, at least in America. Every generation sort of has one of their coming-of-age movies, and this really kind of made in the 70s, but really defined the 60s. We'll talk a little bit more about it here coming up in a few minutes, but we're tackling that tonight. George Lucas's American Graffiti, which is really exciting to go back and dig in the archives and review a movie like this. Also interesting, too, because we were not born in the 60s anywhere close, so giving a perspective on this movie might prove to be futile, but either way, we're going to do our damnedest here. Dominic Guanzon by my side virtually, running the show graciously in Joe's absence, so I appreciate you on that one, Dom. But we got a lot to touch on today. I think this one's going to keep us pretty busy, though. First things first, how are you doing?
Doing all right. Hey, you know what I'm discovering? Journalism is hard. That's
yeah,
a hard thing to do. Obviously, I knew that going in, which is why I was so apprehensive of trying to do it at all. But, you know, my hat's in the ring now, and I'm covering stuff, and it's where I can because, you know, it's still technically not even it's a part-time job. It's a hobby that's turning into a part-time job. I'm trying to go from content creator to actual journalist. And even though I do journalistic things, that process is still a process for me. It's going to take years because I never went to J school, right? So I'm kind of learning from the ground up, and what I've learned from various people like you, Steve, who writes articles for a certain outlet that I actually was reading a couple the other day.
Oh, thank you.
So it's sometimes I'm in over my head. Sometimes every article I write needs to be effing Hunter S. Thompson, 10,000 words. Like, nah, you can just 500 words is fine, bro. It's okay.
You're like the Ayn Rand school of thought. Why use 5 words when you can use 50?
If that's the only time I'll ever be compared to Ayn Rand, I will have lived a good life. So thank you.
I love saying that whenever somebody goes long-winded, myself included. You know, what is it? I think 30 pages of Atlas Shrugged dedicated to a sunset or something like that. But yeah, no, I don't say what I do is journalism. I do kind of glorified feature pieces. Although I was thinking about this actually, because, you know, you get so deep into it, I have to write about 10 articles a week for what I do with the radio station. I can pick all the things I write about. It just has to be pertinent to one of the 3 states, Iowa, Illinois, or Wisconsin. And I've thought about it, like, I don't do a lot of hard news. My coworker, honestly, does more of the occasional shooting or, like, police chase or something of that nature or something. Like, when arrests are involved, he generally handles it. He's got more ins with the PDs than I do. But I've learned when I do it, though, I harbor back to, like, what I learned in college from journalistic and news gathering classes and whatnot. I will say nobody can cite sources like me. Nobody can cite pull quotes like me, and everything like that. So it's kind of like
you do it on this show just regularly, just out of nowhere. You'll just pull a quote.
We're kind of I always tell my coworker, I always say we're like cosplaying journalists in a way, because we're not held to a journalistic standard, but I feel wrong not adhering to it. I'm not a journalist, but we kind of blur the lines, especially when we're like being one of the first to talk about a business closing or something like that. You know what I mean? Like what I do is really glorified feature pieces. Again, talk about attribution. To quote Dan Patrick, we don't break news, we sprain it. You know,
That's good. I like that a lot.
so Dan Patrick always says that, so I'm like that's one thing I use. But yeah, it's interesting though. You'll like it. I got an article this week coming up about Catherine put it on my radar to credit. I got an article about backrooms coming out about how the original backroom photo on 4chan was from Hobbytown store in Oshkosh. So I have that coming out. It allowed me to go long-winded and use phrases that are way out of my lexicon, like no clipping and stuff like that. You know, so if you can't already tell, I'm super pumped to discuss backrooms on this show, watch it and review it. There you go. So it was fun writing about that. But we're going to pivot. We're going to go way back, actually. 1973, when American Graffiti came out. George Lucas directed kind of a young ensemble cast from Richard Dreyfuss to Ron Howard to Candy Clark, Cindy Williams, and even the great radio DJ himself, Wolfman Jack, who is just an awesome figure. Just an awesome dude. One of the on the Mount Rushmore of greatest radio personalities of all time. I'll talk more about him and his role in this movie in a minute. Being that this is a retro review, we haven't done one in a while, but I'm just absolving spoilers right now. We can go into spoiler territory if we so shall please.
You have had 57 years, 53 years to do it, so
53.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a spoiler review if we need to go that
Where were
far,
you in
too.
62? Well, it's been 53, so let's talk free. Let's do it.
American Graffiti. This is not I had this thought watching it, and then somebody on Letterboxd said it, and so it's like one of the top reviews, so I don't want to feel like I'm stealing this thought or anything. Not that it's original, but like, not that I'm complaining, but it's kind of like, I mean, I said this originally about Ryan Coogler when he went from Fruitvale Station to Creed and then to Black Panther. But now he's gotten back to Sinners. And I think now he's doing the X-Files, so he's kind of going back into IP. But this has happened with a lot of directors. Zach Kreger did Barbarian and Weapons, and now he's got Resident Evil. George Lucas is a little bit different because George Lucas created Star Wars. But there is a part of me that, like, kind of wishes we got like one or two other movies of George Lucas like this before Star Wars. You know what I mean? Or like the fact that Star Wars became what it is sort of prevented us from getting Lucas movies like this anymore. You know, he did THX 1138 before this, and then he did American Graffiti, and then it was off to Star Wars the following year. Yeah. You know, so we didn't really get as many like these like humanistic George Lucas movies as I think we might have otherwise. Be that as it may, though, every generation seems to have like their defining comedy of some sorts. Though it was made in the 70s, American Graffiti takes place in Modesto in 1962. So this is kind of like the definitive account of the 60s, be that as it may. When you look at the 70s, it's Animal House, I think. I think Animal House is the overwhelming winner. The 80s, I would say probably it's kind of a little bit more up in the air. I would say Breakfast Club immediately comes to mind. 16 Candles. If you want to look outside the John Hughes spectrum, I mean, if you want, this one I don't think is enduringly popular, but it has a cult following, is Porky's with Kim Cattrall. The 90s, again, a little bit more up in the air for like defining comedies of the 90s. I'm blanking on a couple examples. I mean, hell, I would say Clerks in some ways. I would say Dazed and Confused.
I can see it.
Dazed and Confused, even though it was a little bit more 70s coded. Slacker, even Richard Linklater. And then you have the 2000s. Quite honestly, I think I rewatched it not too long ago. Superbad. Superbad, one of the defining ones there.
There's a through line. There's definitely a through line.
Kind of on the periphery, too. Not as much as Superbad, but I would say another movie that's aged very well humor-wise is Harold and Kumar, the first one. Especially the against type kind of casting of that movie. Yeah. Of like having an Indian and Asian lead being stoners. You know what I mean? I think that was very
Yeah, we can suck too, guys. We can be annoying, obnoxious dudes too.
Well, that was like part of John Cho's MO back in the day.
Right.
Was like that's why he did Better Luck Tomorrow. Was because he said I wanted a movie where Asian characters could be like rebellious. And that's what attracted him to like work with Justin Lin and then eventually blanking on the guy who directed Harold and Kumar, but that movie, Danny something, he just passed away. But anyway, American Graffiti though, this is a movie I saw this years ago, and I hadn't seen it since. This is my second time watching it. This is one of those movies that it's about 2 hours long. It's very much a hangout movie. It's essentially 2 hours of people driving down, like driving through Modesto and driving through these heavily densely populated areas in California and saying hello to each other and interacting with each other. That's kind of what this movie is. It like takes cruising culture to a new level, kind of shows just sort of the kind of wayward, amiable nature of these characters and such. One of the main ones you follow is a character named Milner, played by Paul Lamont, who is got this like souped up hot rod, this bright, yellow Deuce Coupe. I was looking for the name of the car, Deuce Coupe. And he winds up inadvertently picking up this underage teenage girl and named Carol, played by Mackenzie Phillips, winds up sort of like reluctantly taxiing her around. You've got Richard Dreyfuss, who plays Kurt. You've got Ron Howard in true 60s style, credited as Ronnie Howard, who plays Steve. They all sort of meet up at this drive-in area, this like bellhop or car hop place. And then they all sort of go their separate ways. Steve starting college in the morning. Kurt's a little bit worried about leaving, kind of gets blindsided and falls in lust with this blonde woman that like makes eyes with him in a car. So he spends most of the movie chasing her. You've got, again, I mentioned Milner too and Carol. You've got Kurt, again, trying to track down this woman. Steve picks up, or Terry's another character too. Terry played by... Oh, God, please help me. Charles Martin Smith. Terry picks up this lady of the night, let's call her, named Debbie, and sort of has this long-term interaction with her. It's very much a hangout movie. It's very much sort of a series of vignettes. You can see how this movie sort of resonated to at the time because it's not really bound to a strict narrative. It's sort of more about those nights that feel like nothing until the next morning, and then you realize they were kind of everything, and the last time everybody was in the same sort of area together. It's got this very post-high school, pre-college feel to it. Gorgeously decorated, too. Not so much quotable as I feel like it's immersive, and that's kind of where I'll pause to let you kind of give your 2 cents on American Graffiti.
Yeah, no, you really nailed what really engrossed me most about this movie is that it feels almost like a documentary, even though it's clearly fiction. But it's documentary in the sense that I adore movies that really make a set stand out. Let me narrow that down. I really enjoy sets that are used over and over and over again. Places, settings where it's like, no, we're gonna get to know this street very intimately. You don't even have to name it. You don't have to. I don't need like a grid, like map showing me with the names of everything, like a Star Wars encyclopedia entry. But I just love places that, hey, we are going to spend some time at this diner. We're going to spend some time on this long stretch of Main Street where all these cars are just going in and out, and there's the cocktail party effect where people are just walking by each other and talking to each other. And then, but now it's in cars, and there's something so distinctly American about that I, henceforth the name of the title. We'll talk about the title in a bit as to what you think that truly means. I have my own theories, but the 4 principal actors here, the 4 male leads, and going off in their own thing, it just becomes like a carousel of just fun adventures that even to this day are they're prototypical. Like, okay, kid tries to get liquor, right? How many times have we seen that before? But there's something so genuine about the way it's done here. Not just the novelness of it, because it's 1973 is when this was shot, or debuted. But just the way the actors are pretty much, I guess by then you could say that they're playing stereotypes of the people that they're of their characters, right? You got basically the badass loner greaser. You've got the natural leader who's trying to do his own thing. You've got, I guess, the guy who's just looking for love, and then the other guy who's looking for love, but he's a effing dweeb. And there's something just really charming about all of that. And then, of course, another a case here. One of my favorite things in movies is when a bit character later becomes famous, and now their face is plastered all over the movie as if they're a major character, which is Harrison Ford as Bob Falfa. In a really cool character. I don't even know what accent he was doing. I was watching that and I'm like, what is he doing? What does he sound like? Is this a bit? No, he sounds like this the whole time. What is going on? But regardless, how lived in the world is something I absolutely fell in love with this. It's a little, maybe I was just in a weird frame of mind going into the movie, just surrounding my life. But getting up, starting the first like 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, is this a little slow to start? Just a little bit, just a tad bit. But once you get into it and once the cars start going, I'm in. I'm locked in. This is fun.
Yeah, and if you're, this is one of those movies too. I remember I liked it more than this one, and it's a different movie. But there's something, like, I will say this. And it's funny because Catherine and I, we've been going to like the AMC. I know I've told you guys about this. We've been going to AMC like for these double features on Friday. Been doing double features on Friday, and then like hanging out with like some of the staff afterwards. And a lot of the staff is younger. A lot of the staff is like teenagers, high schoolers, early college, and stuff. And talking with them and stuff. I never asked them this. I probably should. But like, what do they think of Superbad? Like, what do they think of that movie? What do they think of a movie like Clerks or something like that if they were to watch it? It's kind of like the movie. I remember like kind of giving a mixed review of the movie Easy Rider with Jack Nicholson. And the reason, part of it was I admitted in the review, like, look, I wasn't a part of this generation. So, like, this movie kind of speaks to a generation that no longer has ears to hear it or has developed beyond the point where they can't even recognize what it was like, remember and recall what it was like to be by then, too. So there's an obvious, as much as I don't like to admit, like, it's not even personal bias, but just like generational divide. There's a part of this movie that I just don't understand, having not lived it. Having said that, though, I think this movie does communicate that well because the setting and the time period in which this takes place is very deliberate. Yeah. This movie takes place in 1962. So this movie predates the Cuban Missile Crisis that happened a few months later. This movie predates the Vietnam War. This movie predates by a year JFK's assassination. And the rise of like hippie culture, counterculture, whatever you want to call it, civil rights even too. This thing predates before the baby boomer generation lost their innocence to be generic but still kind of piercing.
The last vestiges of the 50s is what I kept thinking. I'm like,
that's a good way to put it.
Like every decade bleeds into the next, where it's like, okay, 1980 we got synths and everything, and we got the crazy hair now. No, not necessarily. A little bit more than you think, but everything kind of bleeds into each other. And yes, when I was like, oh, they're talking about President Kennedy. That's okay. Cool.
Yeah, and it's before any of this. It's before any of these like dramatic, seismic socio-political events began taking place, and then like politics became the dominant culture and everything. So there's a certain element of this. It's kind of like in the modern day, to compare it to the modern day, how you're already seeing like the term pre-COVID, like, or pre-pandemic or post-pandemic. Like that was a clear demarcation of time. The world was this. Then it was this for a chunk of about 1.5 to 2 years. Now it's this post-pandemic. We are still in this post-pandemic and will be probably for the remainder of the decade. So that's another thing about this movie too. And it also too, there's a real autonomy of this movie about teenagers that I was thinking about even kind of today. The autonomous nature of teenagers, like teenage culture, really became something that films recognized and began to recognize when teenagers started when automobiles started to become affordable and teenagers got agency and were able to have the independence that comes with driving. That's a lion's weight of this movie too, because so much of this, you'd be hard pressed. There's probably less than 12 scenes in this movie that don't directly involve a fucking car. You know what I mean? Or are taking place in a car. And that's so much of what this movie is. Everything from the car to the kid's relationship with radio to the kid's relationship and the appearance and the status that comes with a type of car. You know what I mean? There are all these candy colored machines that define the characters almost as much as the characters' personalities do. Like, you don't know Milner in the beginning part of the movie, but you can kind of tell everything you need to know about him driving a piss yellow Deuce coupe. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's another point of intrigue with this movie too, is it's defined by the needle drops of the music and defined by the machinery therein.
It's almost toxic in a way. As someone who loves the city and encourages public transit and was really sick of car traffic at this stage in my life, you gotta admit cars are cool. And look, if cars were relegated to just racing and car shows and just showing off, I'd be all for that. So you know what? In this context, it's fine. But America's obsession with the hot rod and the car is obviously didn't start here. It came as a reflection of what was happening in real life. But it really feels supplanted in here, doesn't it? Or not supplanted, implanted, cemented in this movie. I'm sure there's plenty more well before that. You could go to the actual 50s themselves. I don't know, Streetcar Named Desire. But this in particular, I think for the generation, absolutely solidified it. And what it did, really just the nostalgia-ness of it all. Like, this kicked off, from what I'm reading, this really kicked off the wave of 50s nostalgia. Like, when did Grease come out? Did Grease come out after this movie?
Yes.
Yeah, so like, there you go. There's that. There was a Beatles compilation album that was styled after, like, the 1950s aesthetic that John Lennon reportedly just absolutely detested. And he even offered to, like, replace the album art with something he drew up, but they decided not to anyway. Happy Days, also starring Ron Howard, right? Absolutely kicked that off. And it's so funny that this is set in 1962, even though its aesthetic really does come from the 50s. And again, just goes to show you that bleeding over and how you're right. The tail end, like the way, and I guess spoilers, the way that this says, hey, one of these characters straight up dies in Vietnam, right? It really does come right before that. The way that this was released in 1973, just 11 years after the events of the movie, right? Is a testament to just how soon that nostalgia is. For some reason, I thought American Graffiti in my mind went like, oh, nostalgia, not bait, but nostalgia movie. So this probably came out 20 years after the fact, after the time period. No, it's only 11, and that's
impressive in itself.
Really, and it's kind of like how eighth grade was a love letter to, I mean, obviously that time of life, but also like the millennial coming of age as well too. I'm sure there's a
mid-aughts.
There's a dissertation to be had there, but the kind of like nostalgia movie, the decade defining or the decade mirror / look back movie that kind of captures the spirit of that is, I think, it's very bold to say this is the first one, but it's probably one of the earliest intentional movies where George Lucas is like, no, I'm going to write about, what this was like and really organize this movie in such a way where it just feels like a menagerie of things from 1962.
Love a good menagerie.
Yeah.
I was reading this or skimming this out of the corner of my eye too, reading about the soundtrack of this movie.
Oh yeah.
This movie I noticed too uses a lot of diegetic music. Now there's diegetic and non-diegetic. This is a term that doesn't get brought up a ton because diegetic music is very hard to pull off for a lot of reasons. Diegetic music means that the songs can be heard by the characters in the movie, existing in the universe. If it is a song overlaid in a montage, the characters aren't hearing it. That's referred to as non-diegetic music. Most of the movie features, if not all of it, is diegetic music because the music is coming from the radio. It's sort of like there's not like as many tangible settings. Like there's not really a scene. There's a couple scenes where they're like hanging out in front of a drive-in or a sock hop or something like that. There's not many scenes. There's not like a scene of them eating dinner together or anything. They're all in cars. So like it's whatever music is playing over the radio that they can hear sort of sets the mood. So much so that when there's no music, it sort of like makes you lean in a little bit and pay closer attention to what they're saying. I thought this was interesting. This is just an interesting point here. George Lucas was worried because when he wrote the script, he was envisioning songs for it, but he knew that like copyright clearances and stuff like that was going to be the ultimate hang up with getting the use of this music. So here's the creative way they did this, that Universal pulled this off. Universal proposed a flat rate deal that offered every music publisher whose music was utilized in the movie the same amount of money. So they basically wrote up a blanket contract, changed the names of the music publishers, sent them to all of it, and most of them signed up and said that was totally fine with the exception of RCA, which is why there's no Elvis music.
Yeah.
That's why the most glaring absence is Elvis, because RCA wouldn't sign off on the deal, on the flat rate deal like that. You know, which is really creative. I doubt you could probably pull that off now. Mm-hmm. Like, I really doubt you could pull that off.
Dude, Lucas was ahead of his time. He was like a master negotiator, but really just really taking advantage of studio heads and other execs not knowing what they were dealing with here. Like, you know how he made his millions, truly, right? Well, probably American Graffiti because it was a big success. But he really made his money before the Disney deal. Merchandise. It was toys.
Oh, yeah.
He got, I think he's like, yeah, I'll take a small pay for Star Wars if you give me, I think it was 100% of the profits from the toys, something like that, where it was like the execs were like, don't worry, no one gives a shit about the toys, and then the toys were everything. The toys were absolutely everything. So I'm not surprised. When I was reading that too on Wikipedia, I was like, bro, that's so funny. George Lucas just kept making the right deals at the right times, bro.
Yeah, and like I said, those are like those kind of grandfather deals that you will never see again because of shit like that, because of shit like Star Wars. You know, that basically it's like when and only very few directors, I think Quentin Tarantino, I think Tyler Perry had a deal like this too, where they don't like, I think QT had this deal with Miramax eventually with like Kill Bill, where he said, don't pay me up front for the movie. Give me 15% of opening weekend. Like, give me 15% of what we make opening weekend. That's what I want. And then like 5% in the weeks thereafter. Yeah. You know, it's these crafty deals that you can do. Because this movie too, deceptively cheap by even modern standards too. This movie cost $777,000 to make. 90,000 of that went to music licensing.
And its profit $200 million.
Oh yeah. Like, this thing was a massive hit. This was one of the most massive hits of the 70s too. Like, you know, and just the staying power of it, the critical acclaim, and I think the yearning that was even present, because you were saying, too, how this movie came out 11 years after it was set and pulled off sort of like avoided the claptrap of nostalgia bait by being like a true time capsule. Now, we can't speak to that because we didn't live there, but just based on critics, audience reception, enduring legacy, and everything, you got to believe it was accurate to some degree for a lot of people.
I think it's both abstracted to a degree. Everything has to be an exaggeration in creative whatever endeavors.
Right.
But the vibes feel right to me. I can just say that, right?
And it shows you how radically different the world was then 11 years later, that something like this felt like a time capsule and immediately pulled it off because it was still so recent at the time. It was still such recent history, but so much had happened. It would be like comparatively now making a movie set in 2012. Yeah. Like, I kind of think back to like the later scenes of Boyhood, you know, and how accurately portrayed it was, like the dawn of smartphones and everything like that. Like the era, not so much like the the puberty angle and everything, and the child development angle, but more so like the culture at the time. And
things were still in 4:3.
Yes,
which is weird to think about. Like, yeah, TVs were still boxy. Like, we were still, that was the transition phase.
I think it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm misremembering anything, but like, I really find it interesting too that like there are no scenes set in homes in this movie.
There's barely
None.
any adults.
There's very few adults, save for like Harrison Ford, a cop, you know.
The parents at
like,
the very, very, very end, they're barely registering as characters,
Suzanne Summers is the cameo of the older blonde in the Thunderbird. You know what I mean? Like there's very few adults. You're never in anybody's home. Like in this movie too, you're always in this like transitory space in this movie, and it keeps moving too. And that's another thing. Catherine and I just saw Fight Club in the theaters again, and I know that's a weird comparison on the surface, but hear me out. One of the ways Fight Club I think draws you in is the specificity of the narration, of how specific the narration is and the situations are to the characters. Like, it's not something that you're like, oh, I've seen this before. Like, you're locked in from the beginning because it just drops you in this very specific situation. But also Fight Club masterfully has this like forward momentum constantly that is always like, you're never in a setting for too long. Something happens, it's working, it's building towards something, it goes along with the pacing. By virtue that these characters are never like in a fixed setting for very long, and they're often driving somewhere or just cruising, it's a natural forward momentum movie in that way, where even if there's not a lot of plot development, something is always literally in motion. and that's where I feel like that's how this gets away with being like plotless to a degree.
Yeah, it's like at any point the main plot could have been one or two of these stories, and it would have been a little more focused. You could have given it a little more depth, but you really didn't need to, and that's a deliberate choice. Because with the four stories intersecting every now and then, of course, but with the four stories, it just becomes, I guess menagerie is just my word of the day. I just love it. It's fun to say, but the real glass menagerie is through the windshield. But nah, man, the way, dude. Okay, do we want to talk about Wolfman Jack?
We will after the break.
Okay,
really quick before we cut to intermission. See if you can guess this, okay? This movie was nominated for 5 Oscars. Can you guess the one performance in the movie that was nominated?
The one performance?
Yes, only one actor/actress was nominated. Can you guess who it was?
I'm going to guess the drag racer. So Richard Dreyfuss's character.
Decent guess, but no, it's Candy Clark who plays Debbie, who plays the blonde woman.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Props to her.
And if I've spoiled it for myself because I scrolled down to the awards category and stuff like that. I was kind of quietly hoping but I knew it wasn't because I know that like Quavenzine Wallace was the youngest nominee. I was kind of quietly hoping Mackenzie Phillips, who plays Carol.
Okay.
Because I think she was probably my favorite character.
Mm-hmm.
This smart ass like 12-year-old who like is still like precocious enough to know the optics of the situation that she's in.
Sure.
You know, but like is really, really quick-witted. Like, it's one thing to recite dialogue, it's another to really pull it off.
She is a walking, talking like Sandlot character, straitt up.
Oh yeah, she is. She's so good.
Like 15 years before that movie comes out, or whatever, 10 years, yeah.
Labatt's Milner reminded me of like a young Martin Sheen or like a young Charlie Sheen.
Sure,
Even at certain angles, he kind of looks like Martin Sheen. But I really liked Mackenzie Phillips in this. I think she was probably my favorite character, maybe tied with Wolfman Jack, who we will talk about after this, because I am very excited to talk about a radio DJ character in American Graffiti. Don't go anywhere. It's a retro review of American Graffiti. We come to you live and in living color on Sleepless with Steve. Be back in a couple minutes after this Zoom-sponsored intermission. Don't go anywhere. Back and better than ever. It's Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube. We're talking American Graffiti. Made the segue. I said, looking at the Academy Award nominations for American Graffiti, it merited 5 nominations, one of which was Candy Clark for Best Supporting Actress. Picture it was nominated for. Lucas was nominated for director. Film editing was nominated.
Okay.
Thought that was interesting. And then the other one was Best Original Screenplay. That's not the note. Do you want to know what Best Original Screenplay was originally called at the Oscars?
Script? Something script?
Are you ready for this? This is what the fucking award used to be called. Best Story and Screenplay based on factual material or material not previously produced or published. That was the full title of the award.
Okay, you can just say original.
No kid, no kid. That you want to talk about the Ayn Rand school of naming, like, right there. Oh my God, that's like "Don't be a menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood" like title. You know what I mean? But
So speaking of names, wasn't the name of this movie called like Another Quiet Night in Modesto?
was it? Was that like?
So
was that
apparently the original like pitch or studios are trying to change the name.
Oh, I see it.
According to Wikipedia, where it's like, Another Quiet Night in Modesto, which, to be fair, that's the first name I would call if I was making the movie. But I also know that's probably a very basic name. I really like American Graffiti because, okay, when you hear American Graffiti, what do you think of? Like, how does that relate to the movie?
How does it relate to the movie?
Yeah, like what is the title? Yeah,
It's sort of like, you keep saying the word menagerie. It sort of feels like a sort of canvas of very colorful, like graffiti, very colorful characters, vehicles, and things like that make up the broader portrait of a very specific period in time. That's kind of how I loosely interpret it.
Yeah, I looked it up. I did use menagerie correctly. I was worried about that for a second because sometimes I just use words wrong. But yeah, I was thinking about that, and then I was like, I wonder if it's just as simple as American Graffiti. It's just car treads or tire treads from burnouts, and that's the graffiti that's on the road.
Oh, is that like a slang term for like tire marks and things like that?
No, that not a slang term. I just thought of that. That's not confirmed anywhere, but that's my interpretation. Where it's like, yeah, because cars are so tied with American culture and hot rods, and specifically, and sports cars, etc. Especially from the 50s and 60s, that felt like, oh yeah, they're like marking the roads with their tire treads. But anyway.
And that kind of goes hand in hand, though, too, just the idea of graffiti, like marking territory. That's kind of what these characters are doing.
There's a literal gang. There's a literal greaser gang in this film that takes hostage one of the characters.
Like, well, it was funny because, like, some executives wanted the title changed. And there were over 60 alternative titles proposed. One of yours, you mentioned, it was Another Slow Night in Modesto. The other one, Coppola proposed. I kind of like this, but it's a little kitschy. Coppola proposed "Rock Around the Block."
Yeah, it goes with because the very first song is "Rock Around the Clock," right?
Yes, a little kitschy, but I don't hate that one either. Like, now it's one of those situations where it's like you can't picture The Godfather being called anything but The Godfather or Goodfellas. Like, I still think like. Like, what if they called? I don't think you wouldn't have lessened the movie, but what if they would have kept the book title like Goodfellas and called it Wise Guy? If they would have kept the book title instead of Goodfellas. But at any rate, though, we got to talk Wolfman Jack because I'm a radio DJ.
Absolutely.
I have to talk about Wolfman Jack. The mystique of radio here, and again, when I watched this originally, radio was, something I enjoyed, but I never thought I would, be in it and may have it as my career. So it didn't register as much as it did this time around for obvious reasons. And what I like about this movie is that it still addresses the illusion of radio, like the companion of radio, but the illusion of it too. When Kurt gets face to face with who he doesn't realize as Wolfman Jack, but is Wolfman Jack. Because how the hell would he know? You know what I mean? It's just this guy who says, "This is what I do. I play tapes all night long, and I'm a good friend. I play tapes and eat popsicles, and I'm a good friend of Wolfman Jack, or a good friend of the Wolfman, rather." And it like keeps the illusion of radio going, even as it sort of breaks down that wall in so many words. And it's not a very long scene. It's actually one of the only scenes in the movie that's really fixed, set in an interior location.
Yeah, that's true.
But Wolfman Jack definitely leaves an impression on this movie, like personality wise. His radio broadcasts are very, very lived in the moment and everything like that. And it also like it makes you yearn because radio is still alive. It really is, especially in these smaller local communities and stuff like I've worked in. But you know, it's you know, one thing, and I don't want to make this a whole spiel about like how radio has lessened in popularity, even though I very well could. But one of the things is though is that they like really forgot the biggest mistake that radio made, besides the Telecom Communication Act of '96. Look that up on your own. The other mistake that radio made was assuming that people tune in for the music and not the personalities. And it's never been more apparent now. You can listen to any song you want on Apple, Spotify, whatever. You can listen to any song you want. You listen to the radio for the personalities. And it's just remarkable to me, like even the places that I've worked that don't realize that. You know what I mean? That still harbor the idea that like people listen for the music. Well, they can get the fucking music in a million different places. They can only get me here. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, so that was the interesting part of it too. Also, one thing I have to mention, because when the hell else am I going to mention this too? I was reminded of a great Wolfman Jack quote, because he was one of the first radio DJs that, like, one of the first, you know, celebrity radio DJs, but also one of the first that did not try to have the announcer authoritative voice. Like, he had a gravelly voice. I think he smoked, he definitely drank, but
died in 57 from a heart attack. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you can draw your own conclusions on that. But
at the age of 57, yeah.
When people, I forgot about this great quote. One of the things he used to say is like when people would compliment him on his voice, he always said, "It's kept meat and potatoes on the table for years for Wolf Man and Wolf Woman." He's such a fucking character, man. Like he really was, and it's cool. I don't think he did many movies outside of like cameos. I know he did a few TV things and stuff, but it's really cool how like Lucas included him in really what is a lovely scene that's both a testament to like the illusion of radio and the impact of radio of that era.
Yeah. I just think back to like the most random reference was during the Weird Al parody biopic where he was played by Jack Black and he got into a fight with Dr. Demento, played by Rainn Wilson, which is just like, this is some deep cuts right here. This is awesome. For all the radio heads. And there's a magic about that saying. Like you said, it contrasts so well with being outside in American Graffiti that there is like, it's like meeting a wizard, right? There's a mystique about him and it grows and it's so humble and unassuming. Just a guy trying to eat the remaining popsicles in a dying fridge. And then he winds up being the guy, you know?
It's true.
It's like what's that stereotype of like, the magical black man, even though I don't think he was black, but you know, it's got that vibe of the stereotypical, like he's got all the answers and he's on the radio.
Like it's this all-knowing force, you know what I mean? And everything like that. And it's so ubiquitous and wonderful in that way. I already kind of said who my favorite character was. I really liked Carol Mackenzie Phillips' character. I just thought personality off the charts and just, you know, a really kind of different young female role, especially for the time. Who was your favorite character, the character you find yourself gravitating to the most in this?
That's tough. That's really tough. I might have to go with John Milner, played by Paul LaMatte, just because he's got that mystique, and he's arguably the coolest guy, but for an overwhelming majority of the movie, he's stuck with a really spunky, fun character, but he can't really his coolness is immediately hampered, and there's just an inherent funniness to like 90% of his screen time because of that. Like he doesn't get to be cool until the very end when he's in that drag race against Harrison Ford, right? So like that's like on a macro sense, that's a awesome joke.
That is a clever bit of staging there too, because the trope of these coming of age movies is always trying to like. There's always like one cool character or somebody who's enviable or somebody who steals the scene or something like that. Like whether it's like Spicoli in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, whether it's Judd Nelson in The Breakfast Club or something like that. There's always like at least one character, Belushi in Animal House.
Sure.
The character here, Milner's probably the most remembered, even though Dreyfuss and Howard went on to have bigger careers. There's the element of like just Paul Lamott's character, like being evidently the coolest, driving the coolest car, but being put in like this uncool, almost babysitting role. You know what I mean?
Like breaking the mystique of it at the same time.
Definitely, yeah. No, I thoroughly enjoyed this on a rewatch too. I think that this, and again, this is a movie too. I think like we didn't grow up in the era too, and this is so inextricably linked to like rock and roll and cruising and all these other different things. Where where were you in 62? My dad was born in 62. So he couldn't even tell you where the hell he was in 62. You know what I mean? So this movie predates even my parents particularly. But it's really a lovely movie. With a very bittersweet ending too. Just in regards of like after all of that and then the title cards that contextualizes what happened to most of the main characters and such. Kind of reminded me of the song "The Class of '57" by the Statler Brothers and how that song goes. But no, I kind of parlay into closing thoughts here. Now, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie too, and I think that there's also something to be said too about how this movie had Universal had very low expectations of this thing doing well at the time, like had very low expectations. That's why they were trying to like change the title and go through a few different things to try to make this movie more commercial, that they sort of underestimated how the culture was kind of yearning for like this presumed like simpler times and really the last like dying breath of the 50s, because this movie does still feel, it's in early 60s, it really feels like a 50s movie, in that regard, because of before the onslaught of political urgency, television, and all these other things, all these other encroaching forces. It winds up becoming this really loving time capsule. And I was damn impressed watching this again. I give it 3.5 out of 4 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed revisiting this.
Hell yeah. Just real bit of Wikipedia rabbit hole history. According to Wikipedia, Paul Lamont, who plays John Milner, was at one point married, then divorced, Suzanne DePass, who was a assistant to Barry Gordy, at Motown, who was featured in the Michael movie, which we just recently watched.
Yes.
By Laura Harrier, who was the ultra sexy producer woman that Joe Jackson was hitting on while the kids performed on stage. But just a random bit of Wikipedia history, apparently. That's cool. Yes, I will have to give this 3.5 out of 4 stars as well. Really, really enjoyed it. And the ending is just beautiful. Like, we don't get to talk about endings too much here on this show and really revel
not
in
in
them.
detail.
But just the irony of the movie ending on a plane as the character is going back out east, opposite end of the country, leaving that part of their life behind, and just a shot of, is watching the woman in the white Cadillac drive off, never getting to meet her. And then, yes, you get that montage, that beautiful, stoic but gut punching montage of like, yeah, 2 of these characters will die, as time goes on, as time usually does, and the other 2 will live seemingly interesting lives, could be blasé lives, but those stories they're implied. All these stories are implied because of what you witnessed in these past 2 hours of a single night in Modesto, California, and then life goes on. And it captures that beautifully. This is the ultimate. This is truly the ultimate nostalgia movie, and was made with so much love and care, and really, really well done.
Again, I kind of circumvent back to the point too. It would have been nice to see Lucas make one more of these kind of movies. You
It
know
really
what I mean?
is just THX, American Graffiti, Star Wars. That's it. That's his whole life.
Yeah, and it's not like, I mean, granted, Mad Max was never half as big as Star Wars, but like, it's not like even George Miller, who you know,
Yeah.
he made Mad Max and then he does Babe and then he does Happy Feet. You know what I mean? Or does like even that one with Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton, 3,000 Years of Longing, I think
Right.
it's called. You know, like where he does a couple like what I call like quote unquote one for me movies. You know, like literally like George Lucas now has I didn't even realize I've seen every movie he's directed. You know, he's directed THX, American Graffiti, Star Wars, and then episode 1, 2, and 3. And that's it. Like he does not have a very deep catalog whatsoever, an impactful catalog, damn sure. But it would be interesting if like to ask Lucas like one more original movie if you really wanted to make it, and if he could have, he would. But like one more original work, what would you have done? I was reading too. And also, I never miss an opportunity to shout out Wikipedia. There's a little, if you look at the American Graffiti movie article on Wikipedia, there's a little green stamp at the top. That is to signify what Wikipedia considers a good article. And I wholeheartedly agree. This is a phenomenal Wikipedia article, this American Graffiti, worth a read or at least worth a skim. Lucas, one of the first scenes he wrote, I was reading off this one site, one of the first scenes he wrote was a scene with Wolfman Jack because he loved Wolfman Jack, so much so that he considered making a documentary on Wolfman Jack around this same time, which would have been really cool too. So
It would have been
again,
cool, but in a way, he cemented him in the memory alone, the imagination of the American consciousness in that one scene, and in this
I
movie.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. You know, not even a happy accident, just a very thoughtful inclusion too, that says so much. Love going down the rabbit hole of this one. American Graffiti. I
Good
didn't even
pick,
look
Joe.
because
Good pick.
yeah, good shout out to Joe on this one. I didn't even look because we watched it on Vudu. It is on Netflix, which is kind of shocking to me, but it is on Netflix. It is streaming there, so it's very accessible, which is a good thing. It's got to be. It has to be one of the oldest fucking movies on Netflix. It just has to be.
Yeah.
You know, at 73, I'd be shocked to learn if there's anything from the 60s on Netflix, but highly recommend checking out American Graffiti if you've not seen it. That's our show tonight, though. Next week is God Is, which I am supremely excited for. Have been waiting for this one for a few months now. This new movie directed by Alicia Harris. Starring Cara Young, Mallory Johnson, Vivica A. Fox, Sterling K. Brown. This is I've got really I hope I'm not setting myself up for failure. I have no idea what the reviews are of this thing. I'm super pumped though for this one. Just on like threadbare plot, poster, and cast alone, I'm sold. I haven't even seen the trailer for it. So I'm looking forward to talking Is God Is. Got some movies. I actually have very high expectations for the two movies coming out this weekend. Is God Is and Obsession. The new Curry Barker movie too. So looking forward to chatting about Is God Is next week when the trifecta is all together. That is our show. It is Sleepless with Steve. We come to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening, 6:30 Central Time. Shout out to Dom once again. Thank you for taking the time to host this show today and put in that legwork. I greatly appreciate you. For Dominic Guanzon, the unseen but still love Joe Viso, and yours truly,